What is up, everybody? Welcome back to Roughing the Passer. As always, my name's Drew, here with Mr. Newman and Son. What's going on, man? Well, guys.
What's going on? Newman and Newman Esquire. We're like a law firm.
You are. Jordan, welcome to the show. For all of you that don't know, this is John's son, Jordan, going to be joining us today. And, first of all, everybody, welcome back. It's been a while. Kind of had a little kink in a little change of plans the last couple of weeks. Not too much going on in the sports world, so not too much to talk about. But it is draft time, John. So finally, there is something meaningful actually going to happen besides an awesome Jordan documentary.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. We were going to do this last night, but the ESPN reached out to us and said they didn't want their ratings to 100%. Drop. So they asked us if we could move to today. And we like MJ. You're a Carolina guy, so we did it for him.
Yeah, absolutely. I got that same call, so it happens. But it was a good part one. Good part one. I like seeing everything. But welcome everybody. So like I said, John, finally, free agency slowed down, but
yeah. Well, I think that's good. I mean, everything with COVID-19 is grinded everything to a halt. I mean, as everyone knows, even this draft is going to be in Roger Goodell's dungeon. So, it's crazy, man. It's crazy even to think how this draft's going to unfold, compared to, what it usually is with guys, hugging and handshaking and we're gonna get none of that. Now there are probably some of the players that are probably, thank God I don't have to talk to Roger Goodell, but I think some will, it's like high school graduation. You don't get to walk the stage,
it's gonna be weird. I am looking forward to the hot mics. There's definitely going to be some humor, and I do not trust these guys to know how to run Zoom calls yet, and so I think it's going to be quite humorous to watch 32 different groups of people try and manage these Zoom calls, but it's definitely going to be an interesting one. I kind of like the format. I kind of think it's cool. I like the format. I know a lot of people are planning on tuning into the first round, as I've seen the Vegas numbers already. They said there's 5 times the amount of money as last year that's already been wagered on the draft. So you can tell the gamblers have been waiting for something to bet on.
Yeah.
And you can bet $100,000 and win $100 if Joe Burrow gets picked number 1. So,
that's if you're a rich guy, that's almost like a gimme bet just to make some, play money at that point. I just hope they pump in some booze into Goodell's basement. Like I don't want him to be off the hook and not get booze.
He's probably never been booed.
Maybe his wife will come downstairs and boo.
Well, like dinner's ready. What did you do?
Hey, Roger, I made your favorite. Come on.
He's got a butt. He's got to have a smart button at home that he pushes that just boos so he can get used to it. I mean, you got to with his history in the draft. But yeah, it'll be interesting. I hope he shows up in like a hat and a t-shirt. I don't want him to wear like a suit. Just show up like you just rolled out of bed.
Boxers.
Yeah.
NFL ones. They gotta have the logo. I don't know.
Yeah. But anyway, guys, once again, please call in. It's been a while since we've been on, so call in. Let us know what you think is going to happen in this year's draft, what you agree with, disagree with, because we're about to give our all draft teams, John. So I don't know. Should we start with offense or defense? Which side of the ball you want to start with?
I don't know. I like dessert last, so let's go defense first. I think. Right. We'll save kind of the sexier picks for later.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we'll start off with defensive line. We broke down the defense into defensive lineman, edge, linebacker, corners, and safety. So we're going to be taking one from each, and then we'll be discussing some other guys from each position, I'm sure. But John, we'll start up with the big guys up front. Who you got for John and Jordan? Who do you guys have for the best defensive lineman?
I got a guy I think might wind up on your Panthers potentially. And I know a lot of mocks I've seen they have him slotted to the Panthers. It's Derek Brown, the big guy,
Nice.
out of Auburn.
Yeah, I have the same pick. That's my
very
guy.
nice.
I think he's sort of. I think he's. I don't know. I don't want to steal your pick. I don't know if you picked him too, Drew.
Nope.
But he's. You didn't.
Nope.
I tried not to pick him. I really tried to go with like a sort of an underdog, but to me, he kind of was the. I couldn't pick, anyone else. There was another guy, might be the guy you're about to tell us, that I thought about, but I didn't pull the trigger on.
Well, see, there's a lot of guys in this draft, which I do like that pick. He has been mocked to the Panthers a whole lot. I pray that's not who we get because there's someone I like a lot better at that slot. But it's a solid pick. But for the defensive line, I've got who I think is the best pass rusher in the draft and who by far has the coolest 2020 Prism draft pose. And that would be Javon Kinlaw from South Carolina.
I like him. But I worry about the injuries, and he'll come up later on in another part of the show. Not to ruin the surprise, but
sure.
Like talent-wise, I don't argue with you. Matter of fact, you may be better, like you just said. I just worry about, and it's more than one injury. He's got some other things going on, and so, and then his drug screen got flagged as well. So, just some question marks there.
And that's why I like him. That's why I like him in that spot, because I think this is one of those drafts where I take news that you get from this draft with a big grain of salt. I don't think we know these players near as much as in previous years. I don't think teams do.
Yeah.
And the injury concerns, obviously, it's there. I don't see it being a massive concern, but obviously, I mean, you could say that about 20 different people in this draft, probably. Yeah. But if I'm not looking at injuries and I'm going by who I think is actually the best pure pass rusher in the draft at D lineman, I got to go with Kinlaw. But I think either one of those picks would be good. This draft is stacked on defense. There's a lot of good defensive linemen, but I don't know. Those two are probably up there at the top.
Yep.
All right, so moving on from defensive line, we'll go right over to the edge and Mr. Newman, Mr. Newman's.
All right, we'll let Jordan. I think this one, I got to think we might all be consensus here.
I would hope so.
Yeah, I went with Chase Young on this one. This one didn't take much. I think this is probably the most solid pick in probably all the positions in the draft.
I think this will probably be the only one we all three pick the same, because I don't think there is another option.
No.
He's, in my opinion, he's the best player in the draft. And
that's what I was about to say, Drew. You hit it right on the head. I think if the Bengals didn't need a quarterback, they might even be going for Chase Young.
I don't even know even if they did, I think if Burrow doesn't have the season he has, it's Young without a doubt.
Well, I also think he's going into – I look at Washington at 2, and if it was the old regime, I'd worry about it. With Ron Rivera there, I know Ron Rivera and his team better than anybody. He is 1,000% falling in love with Chase Young and cannot wait to draft him and get that kid on the field. I actually like him being drafted to a coach like Ron Rivera because he is so defensively focused. I think it's going to do really big things for him, for a kid that's already incredibly talented. So I gotta go with you guys on this one and go with Chase Young. All right, so we'll move on to the linebackers. And John, I'll start this one off because you mentioned who they had in the mock drafts for the Panthers in a lot of these, but this is who I actually hope the Panthers take, and it's my best linebacker of the draft. It's Isaiah Simmons from Clemson. If he's there at 7, I know there's been mocks saying the Giants could take him. I think the Chargers could also take him if they really are set at quarterback and don't want to go wide receiver that early. I could see them easily trying to shore up that D a little bit, but I think Isaiah Simmons is the best linebacker in this draft. And for the Panthers, just lost Kuechly. It's not Shaq. I mean, you can say it's Shaq Thompson's team, but he's more of a secondary player. He's not really a leader of a linebacker core, or at least hasn't shown me anything like that. So I like Isaiah Simmons, and I pray he drops to 7 and the Panthers can grab him.
Yeah, I like him too. I think he's going to be he's one of the guys I look at, and I think like he's kind of going to be an all-pro linebacker for multiple seasons. I think you can plug and play with him, and I think you can build around him. And like you just said, I think he fits kind of what the Panthers I think are going to plan to do or want to do. He's going to make if the Panthers wind up with him, I think the loss of Kuechly, while still will be big shoes to fill, will be a lot less severe. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, at least then you have someone else to talk about too. Then you have somebody else to look forward to at the position instead of just trying to move some pieces around and think it's going to stay the same. So Jordan, who do you have for linebacker?
Yeah, I went with Simmons. He just does. There's no real weakness. There's no spot where you can look and say you wish he did this better, because he almost does everything you'd want him at a linebacker to do at an elite level, and covers almost past what you'd expect out of a middle linebacker to almost a safety type level.
Yep.
So I think you can build. There's no system he fits in. He fits every system. He is almost your system, and you kind of build around him. So I think whoever gets him, that's really your building block from your defense.
No, I think you nailed it. He is a pretty much plug and play day one. I mean, I see him with a captain on his chest and running a defense for whichever D he gets drafted to. I see him running it for a while, unless it's the Giants, because Dave Gettleman will find a way to screw that up. But anyway, while we watch this Jordan documentary about shitty GMs, while I'm watching Jerry Krause, I'm like, that reminds me of somebody. Oh yeah. Thomas Davis thought the same thing. But moving on now to cornerback, John. Who do you have as your best corner in the draft? This is a deep one. This is a deep position in this year's draft.
It is deep, which is good for a lot of teams. I think the Steelers would like to get another one somewhere in this draft, potentially, maybe late. So we're not going to talk about anyone here that they're going to get. But I look to try not to pick this guy, but I've watched the tape on him. He just does everything too well. He's kind of that shutdown, lockdown corner where if you don't really take him first, I don't know what you're doing. So it's Jeff Okudah out of Ohio State.
And what about you, Jordan? Same thing?
I was on the edge. It was really him or Henderson. Obviously, I kind of root for the Gators, being like a huge Tebow fan. So I was kind of conflicted, but I kind of went with Okudah just based on being more physical and being kind of he's just bigger and he has more size than I think Henderson. Where I think Henderson is more of a flashy guy, but I think Okudah is more your safer and will be there every play.
Well, we will see which one it is, because my corner is the man you just talked about, and that's C.J. Henderson from Florida. And I hate picking Gator guys, so this was a tough one to write down for me. But 6'1", 200 pounds. I like this kid. He's prototypical size. He can, like you said, flashy. That's for sure. I see both of these guys as number ones in a couple of years. I don't think either of them is going to be a quote unquote bust, Okudah or Henderson. But I don't know, something about Henderson when I looked at both of them, because I looked at all of these number one guys and then I watched the guys behind him and I'm looking at film, and I don't know, Henderson just jumps out for me. I don't know, something about it just tells me it's going to be Henderson. But once again, it's one of those where I don't think you can go wrong with either of them. I think both of them are going to be great.
Yeah, I agree. I think Henderson will make bigger plays. I think he'll make the big pick sixes. I just think Okudah, I don't know, the frame, and I like the guys that have come from Ohio State recently at corner. Yeah. I think they really haven't missed, and ever since Myers got there, and now with Day.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's true. They really haven't, and Ohio State's been cranking them out. So, I mean, they do have that on their side. But moving on now from cornerback to the last of the defense, John and Jordan, safety. So, who you got at safety?
Go ahead, Jordan. We both have the same guy because we actually this was the one guy we discussed before we came on the air, because I didn't think he was going to pick him, but he did. Okay. So
we went with Delpit. It was tough because he's a guy you kind of you forget about because going into the year, he kind of looked like your top 10 guy. And I think he's still has the size, the speed, and the ability. I just think he still has the top 10 talent. I think falling really helps because he's going to be able to go into a team and not have to be the guy. He's going to be able to fit in with guys most likely around him. So I think he's going to have a great rookie year, just kind of benefiting from not having a great of a year before in college.
Sure. No, I like the pick. John, is that who you took as well?
Yeah, I went with Delpit. Okay. I know he didn't have as good a year as maybe people projected, but I think some of that, Drew, is due to they don't throw his way as much.
Yeah.
It was like Deion Sanders. I'm not comparing him to Deion, but like no one threw Deion's way, so he didn't have a lot of things because he didn't have to do a whole heck of a lot because they were scared of him. I think that's a little bit with Delpit too. I think he came in highly rated. I don't know how much he's going to fall. I don't think he should. I think he's the best safety. Again, another deep position. You got. I don't want to say because it might be your guy, so I don't want to crash the party. But
well, I'll go on and crash it. I went with someone else. I went with Xavier McKinney from Bama. I love this kid. He's 6 foot, 200 pounds. At safety, this kid can line up anywhere. I could see him, and I really hope he gets put with some system that pulls their safeties down because this kid can get physical. This kid can line up all over the field. I actually really, really like him as actually one of my favorite players in this entire draft. I think the best players that are going to come from this draft are probably going to be on defense. And McKinney is one of my favorites. I fell in love with the kid. I always tend to fall in love with corners and safeties, but watching this kid play, you can throw him anywhere, corner, safety, and I've got total confidence in him from day one.
Yeah, I mean he's actually rated on a lot of people's boards as the number one. So definitely talented. Again, so deep in a lot of these secondary positions that you have a lot of choices to make.
Absolutely. So before we dive on over onto the offensive side of the ball, guys, once again, please call in and let us know who any of your favorite draft picks are, who you hope your team picks, or if you disagree with, of course, anyone that we are talking about. But John, before we dive in onto the offensive side of the ball, I wanted to kind of take a look and kind of break it up a little bit, the offense and defense here, and look at biggest draft surprise. So when you're looking at this draft, who is the player that you see or that you guys both see maybe getting drafted a lot higher than he should? Someone that's going to sneak into the first round that maybe, people aren't looking at so far.
I got two guys, if I may. I'll just say both of their names. Jordan Love, who's a guy I don't really love, and Justin Jefferson, the receiver at LSU, who I like. I like him, but I think teams are going to really get goo goo gaga over him, and I don't want to say reach, but probably someone's going to take him maybe a little bit higher than they should, or maybe ahead of someone they shouldn't. So one guy I don't really like at all. One guy I like, I just think someone's going to grab him too soon.
And what about you, Jordan? Who's your biggest draft surprise?
I don't know if it's one guy. I think it can be one of the receivers that go after your big three of Lamb, Judy, and Ruggs. I think a team's going to jump and get a guy that fits their system, and it might not be the guy that you look at as the best guy at receiver on the board. I think they're so close. Your next 3 to 4 guys, they're almost – it really just depends. So I think you could see a guy that might be a second rounder who just another team grades him better and is a better fit. So I think you might see a guy like Mims jump up or a guy like Ayuk who really go early.
Yeah. Mims is actually who I had. And I 100% agree with you. I think that's exactly what happens here is I think you have so many people, like you said, outside of those big names that are the top 15, top 20 picks, if you will, the first of their positions. Outside of those guys, they are all so close. And you are going to find people, especially in this draft, where they don't have as much time to obsess about people. You're probably going to find them falling in love with people a lot more because they don't have as much time to second guess themselves. at least with actual footage. And so I agree with you there. It could be Jefferson. Love, I agree with John. I think you're going to see a lot of them, actually. I think this draft's going to be full of it. I don't think these mock drafts really have nailed down what's going to happen in this draft, but we shall see. And guys, please, once again, call in and join the show. Let us know who you think's going to be the biggest draft surprise. But John, we'll move on over to the offensive side of the ball now for the all-draft team. And for offense, guys, we have got quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, and offensive line. So, John, we'll start off up front with the O-lineman. Who do you guys have as your best offensive lineman?
I took Tristan Wirfs out of Iowa. I like him. I think he pass block, he run blocks. I think he's one of those just big, ugly guys up front that's just going to beat people up. You know, I hate to use the Joe Thomas comparison, but one of those, guys out of that conference that just don't say a whole lot, just go out there, do their job. You pay them, they don't leave, and they last 7 to 10 years, potential Hall of Fame type offensive lineman type guys. I know he's not one on everyone's board. He's probably moved up to one on mine, so I'm gonna take him right here.
Nice. What about you, Jordan?
I went with Jedrick Wills. I just think he brings something you don't normally get in a guy that had to be the right tackle for a left-handed quarterback. I think he brings a thing where he might not be ready to be a left tackle, but he's going to be a great right tackle right away, and eventually I think he can become that, all-pro left tackle eventually. So I think he can be an instant impact guy and eventually be kind of fit into the mold as, an all-pro, your cement left tackle.
Interesting. I like both of those picks, but once again, 3 different guys right here. Offensive line, another one of these deep positions. But I've got the big man from Georgia, Andrew Thomas. The dude can literally line up left tackle or right tackle today. But you throw him out on the field, he can pick his side. I think whoever takes the kid, honestly, whoever takes him has automatically protected their quarterback, probably knocked out 6 sacks off of him, I'd say, per year. I love the kid. I think whoever takes him, he's a day one starter. So Andrew Thomas out of Georgia.
Yeah, I like all 3 of those guys are probably long haul starters. And for me, I think maybe it just came down to I like just saying Tristan Wirfs. It might be a simple.
It very well could be. All right, so we'll go now to the one of the least, or at least, what am I trying to say? One of those, I guess, smallest talent pools in the draft, if we will, tight end. Who do you got for your tight end? I think we'll probably all have the same person here. But who do you guys have?
I don't know. I had this. I'm actually going to my sheet. I went lower on the board here, man.
Okay.
Because of what you just said, Drew. I think this is like you just said, the lightest position. It's not stocked. I think you got a lot of question marks. I don't think you got someone like at these other positions like a Chase Young where it's a no-brainer. We don't have a no-brainer tight end here. There's 8, and there's none of those 8 I really love in particular. So I went on the lower end here, and Bryson Hopkins out of Purdue, which I know he's like 5th or 6th on a lot of people's tight end rankings. But I just Purdue uses the tight end. He's a senior, where some of these other guys that are rated a little higher are underclassmen coming out early. And so I'm going to go with the experience. He's got the size. I mean, he's got all the measurables and 4 years of experience. So I went with that. Again, a lot of question marks here. That doesn't mean he's going to even pan out, but that's just where I would go. I wouldn't go even early on many of these guys at this point either.
What about you, Jordan?
I went with Cole Kmet. I think out of Notre Dame, just being 6'6", he fits everything you'd want out of a tight end. And I think coming from Notre Dame, being a kind of a run-heavy team, he's got the ability to block. And being 6'6", we showed with a book he can catch too. So I think in a weaker class, having the ability to do both just alone is kind of big.
Yeah, no, I actually took Komet too. I think, like John said,
I think you guys should do your own show. I think I just come off.
Well, no, I mean, like you said, my choice
kidding.
with Komet ended up with like a coin flip, really, because I do like him. How the reason I took him is because of his blocking ability. I think he's going to be a more complete tight end than a lot of these guys. A lot of question marks with him, but as you alluded to, John, there's a lot of question marks with almost all of these tight ends. It's a light class. I don't really know what exactly is going to happen there.
Yeah.
But we'll go on now to probably the deepest and one of the most interesting positions of the draft, wide receiver. So curious to see who you guys have for wide receiver here.
Well, you go first, Jordan.
I said Jerry Jeudy. I think it was a toss-up between him and Lamb, but I think just there's something about the way Jeudy plays. He reminds me a lot of, obviously being a Steelers fan, of AB, just the quick coming out of cuts and being a great route runner. I mean, obviously there's some questions after being considered illiterate by the Wonderlic test, but I don't need him to read me books or nothing. As long as I think he gets open, I think he can be an anchor for a team and be great with the young quarterback to grow with.
Nice. What about you, John? Who you got here?
All right, I didn't pick Jerry Jeudy because, and I think sometimes, full disclosure, I think sometimes we do put too much emphasis probably on the Wonderlic test. Mm-hmm. But man, he scored pretty low. That makes me nervous. Like,
well, have you ever taken
7?
Have you ever taken
can hand me that test?
No, I have not.
I did years ago. I can't even remember what I scored. I have to do it again. Okay. But if you hand me the Wonderlic test when I'm sleeping, I probably score more than a 7. Which he did awake. That makes me nervous. I know he's a great talent, and he's probably most likely maybe the first wide receiver off the board, and I can't even argue it on talent, but a 7 Wonderlic score it really gives me the creeps enough to pick CD Lamb, who didn't score 7 on the Wonderlic and is very talented in his own right.
All right. Well, another position where we got 3 different people, and wow. I don't need Jerry Jeudy to read me books. I definitely don't. But I will say the Wonderlic test, I've taken it a couple of times. It's meant to trip those guys up, and it can easily be one of those things where if you stumble, you pretty much guess to try and finish. Which I'm guessing that's probably what happened with him. That's probably the only way you can get a 7. But I don't know. Chris Johnson, I went to school with him. He was dumb as rocks. So, I mean, I would believe it. But
I mentioned that to Jordan before we came on.
He's dumb as shit. But, I mean, he was a good football player. But I actually went with Judy's teammate, Henry Ruggs III. I love this kid. I absolutely love him. He is blazing fast. Judy's much more polished route runner. Ruggs definitely has to shore that up, but I don't know. I had the same concerns with DK Metcalf last year. He proved me wrong. And I mean, they're not the same person by any means, but I like Ruggs. I think you put him into the right system. I think he can be incredibly deadly. I would love to see him on the Panthers, but I know it won't happen. But I went with Ruggs. I love the kid.
Well, I mean, just in general, Drew, I like that pick too. This wide receiver group, I mean, incredible. That's the thing. It's so deep. Yeah. When do you go and grab the first one? Like you can wait almost. It's like it's going to be interesting. Like Jordan brought out earlier in the show, how this wide receivers start to fall off the board, or do they drop because it's so deep? Yeah. Do teams say, you know what, there's 12 guys I'm comfortable picking. I'm not going to use my first round pick on that deep of a position, so we're going this route. And so it's going to be interesting to see, and that could go the other way. Someone like falls in love with a Justin Jefferson or a Mims, and they say, you know what, I'm sold on him. I'm taking him here.
That's what I think you see. I think there's so much talent that guys are going to look and think they're outsmarting the guy next to him. And I like this guy because, he's not, front page news. They're just, like you said, there's so many guys. And I think it'll show the different ways I think teams scout, because there's not this general consensus anymore, really, of your top five. I think you have your top three. And then I think you really start to see where, which scouts with which teams really what they value and how they look at guys when they have to, they're really doing the work. They're not, they're not getting that front row seat anymore.
No, 100%. I think it's going to come down to it. Where the wide receivers go in this draft is going to be what happens when the first one comes off the board. Do the rest of the teams that like these guys, do they panic and jump on them?
Yeah.
And do they go early? Yep. Or do they all say, okay, the first guy's off the board. Yeah. The guys that didn't fall in love with him now probably think, okay, my guy's safe in the back. Or do they panic? I think this is where this year's draft could get interesting, because all these guys don't have representatives sitting at tables. There's not a bunch of people in the room because, let's be honest, I know this stuff happens in war rooms. That information is getting leaked out to other teams throughout the entire draft. This year could be a lot more closed off than normal. And it could also be where GMs don't hear those whispers and almost panic a little bit. So I think it kind of depends on what happens when that first wide receiver goes off the board, what the GMs and the coaches decide to do. Do they panic to grab their guy before he's gone? Or do they say this class is so deep, did they fall in love with 3 or 4 of them? But guys, we'll move on.
It's going to be interesting.
No,
it's going to be interesting.
All right, we'll move on. We got 2 positions left. We'll stop off at the running back, and then we'll end it up with the all-important. But who you got for running back?
Who wants to go?
I'll start it off this time. Yeah, sure. I'll start it off. And I love him. He's from Georgia, DeAndre Swift. Love him. Think he's amazing. I think he is. I don't know. They're saying he's not a first-round pick. I actually think he could be one of those guys that does go in the first round. But I have fallen in love with the kid. I love watching him on film. I know Akers is incredibly good. He was amazing for Florida State. Running back, really, I kind of have a guy that I like a little bit more possibly, but he's kind of my dark horse on if he can stay healthy. But I went with DeAndre from Georgia.
Yeah, I like him. He's my pick, but I do like Jonathan Taylor a lot. He had a monster combine, and he had a monster year at Wisconsin, and he's talking a little bit. I don't want to say smack, but he's pretty confident, saying he's going to be the next great back in the NFL. I mean, you could look at that 2 ways. You like a guy that's confident in his abilities, or is he writing checks he can't cash? So I guess it depends what side of the aisle you fall. I went with Swift, but I think this is like 1 and 1A, and I really was almost a coin flip. And I think I actually went with Swift, quite frankly, because I do a money football fantasy league, and we do college picks like years ahead, and I actually took DeAndre Swift in one of those. So I'm a little biased. If the Steelers go running back at 49, like they're rumored, sometimes I'd be happy with either one of these guys if that's the route, the direction they go.
Nice. What about you, Jordan? Who'd you take?
So I had 2 guys too, but since you guys picked Swift, I'm going to go with Dobbins. I think Dobbins is probably the most explosive. I don't think he brings as much receiving as Swift does, but I think he's just he reminds me a lot of the Ohio State kind of thing with Zeke. He's not great in the pass game, but I think you can really anchor your run game to him. And if for a team that's lacking a run game, I think he's almost an all-in-one guy. From the jump, you can plug and play, and he's going to be an over 1,000-yard receiver from the jump.
Yeah, I like all of those picks. It's nice to see Jonathan Thomas do something besides home improvement. He hasn't done anything in a while, so I'm glad to see him get work. But I think he could be great. I like all of those. I don't know. Something makes me want to go with DeAndre, though, but we'll see how it works out. So we'll move on now, guys, to the almighty quarterback. Who you got as your best quarterback in the draft?
All right, I'll go first because it's chalk here for me. It's the guy I talked about all year, even during the regular season for NFL. I brought him up. I really, I know he had the one huge year. A lot of people, the guy next to me right here is going to point out that, he had kind of one booming year. What about before that? But I really like Joe Burrow. I know I've used a comparison to Tom Brady. He has some sort of it factor. He wins games. He's got that charisma. Every team they put in front of him, and they played a really tough schedule. Some people realize that, but some may not. LSU played one heck of a schedule.
Yeah.
And his worst game, here's the crazy thing. His lowest quarterback rating was in the national championship game. It was like 78 point something. That was his worst game by quarterback rating, and he threw 5 touchdowns. Yep. So that's his worst game on paper. I don't know. I like him. I just think he to me, all the other quarterbacks to me have more question marks or more holes, if you will. I think he's the safest bet. Some people don't think he's going to be an all-pro, let's say, and I'm not even sure. But I just think you got it. He's the best quarterback. If we're picking the best quarterback, he's my guy.
Sure. And who you got, Jordan?
I disagree. Surprisingly, I think Tua's the guy. I think the thing with Burrow is he had the great year. I just have a hard time of giving the keys to my franchise to Kai that's done it for a year. And I think in most other years, he's kind of clearly the guy. But with a guy like Tua who had done it at such a high level, where Bama is not known for having a high-powered offense. They win with defense and pound the ball. And then you have a guy in Tua who changed, you know what I mean? They're airing it out all game. I think seeing him do it for 2 or 3 years, it just at that high level, it just means a little bit more to me than Burrow. I think Burrow had the better year. I'm going to trust what Tua's done for the extra year or two. The hip injury scares me, but they said as long as he's in the right situation, if he's not rushed back, I think Tua can be who I kind of think people thought he was going to be before the injury.
Interesting.
Marcus Mariota?
He's going to be better than Mariota. I think he's a much better passer than Mariota was.
Yeah, those are interesting. Both of those. I knew John was going to go with Burrow. I knew that just from all season long. But that's an interesting one with Tua. I'm actually going to go a different way than both of those picks, actually. And that's my boy from Oregon, Justin Hebert. I love the kid. He is 100% a project. He could be a 1,000% bust. But he could also be absolutely amazing. He has an incredibly high ceiling. He's just got a lot to learn still. And the reason I like him is because I think, unless, like I said, it really depends on how all these chips fall. If a quarterback needy team doesn't jump up and grab him to where he's forced to start that next year, if he can sit, learn, develop, maybe play towards the end of a year for a team like that, or even go to a team like the Saints. I could see the Saints grabbing Drew Brees' eventual replacement if Taysom Hill's not it. You put him on a team like that where he can sit behind someone and kind of pull the Aaron Rodgers and learn a year or two. I think he's got the potential with a really high ceiling. And Burrow, while I like him, it scares me going to Cincinnati. The thing that concerns me the most is how you bounce back from being on your ass all year. If you can bounce back and keep that confidence, then he could be amazing. But you see what happens to some of these guys when they go from being comfortable to being backwards all year. They lose that confidence. They lose that feel. The game never fully slows down, and, it happens. So I don't know. I'm going with Hebert here, but I like I actually also like Tua a lot. His injuries concern me way too much.
Yeah. I think it'll be interesting with Burrow and Tua. Both Bama and LSU is seeing which guys really excel in the NFL, and that I think that's going to tell you who was really responsible in college for a lot of these success. Because you look at both teams, you have Tua, then you have Ruggs, and you have Judy, and then you have Jefferson, Eclair, and Moss. So in Burrow, so which guy is really making it happen, and which guy is benefiting from having the rest of the talent around him?
Right. No, I completely agree. It's going to be interesting to see. I think a lot of it has to do with where these guys go. But one guy we didn't mention is Jordan Love. So nobody's falling in love with Jordan Love. Where do you think this man?
The Patriots. The Patriots love Jordan Love, I hear.
Apparently, the Panthers do too. We've been checking him out. I really hope we're set at court. Apparently, I don't act like I do. No.
Yeah,
I hope not. I really hope we haven't. Marty Herney's not that screwed in the head that he would go with Love at 7, but we shall see. Yeah. So, we were talking right now, and there's been a lot of talk. We'll move on now from our all draft team guys to a couple of topics before we end the show. And once again, guys, call in if you have any questions or comments you'd like to add. But John and Jordan, there's always that one guy. This year, at least, he's not going to have to be on TV all day unless he leaves his Zoom on all day. I don't know how they're going to do that with the draft guys, but who's the guy on Thursday night that's going to be sitting the longest? There's always that one guy. Is there someone that you guys see falling out of the top 10, someone that could maybe slide, maybe even stay there the entire first round?
He's not on my list, but I want to mention him. It's a guy we just talked about.
Yeah.
It's Tua. If teams get scared by the injury report, and he a couple of the teams that need a quarterback pass on him, and then a bunch of teams that don't need a quarterback aren't going to pick him, he can be the guy that potentially slides. But what I think would happen there, Drew, even if that happens, someone's going to trade up to make sure that doesn't happen. So I don't see it with Tua. It could happen, but I wouldn't bet on it. So I got two guys on my list. One of them you're not going to like because you mentioned you like him so much. But I'll go with the first guy that we didn't talk about, Mekhi Becton, the Louisville front man there. His drug screen got flagged. Some other stuff, question marks have come up. At one point, he was the number 1 rated lineman. That's kind of cooled off a little bit. I still think he's going to go in the first round. I'd be shocked if he doesn't. But I think at one point he was going to be like a sort of a top 7 pick. And now I could see him go into the 15th or lower, 20th or lower potentially. And so I think his stock is he's cooled off a little bit as far as on people's radar. And the other guy is the guy you talked about earlier that you really like, who is good, but it's all those injuries we kind of discussed already, is Javon Kinlaw, who, again, I like him. It's just that it's not even one injury. It's just a 2 or 3 different areas where he's had some injuries. And I just wonder if that's enough to, in a deep defensive class, for someone to just say, I'm going to take a safer, uninjured guy as talented as he is. So those will be my 2 guys I throw on that list.
And what about you, Jordan? Who you got?
I kind of agreed with you. I think whatever one doesn't get picked between Love and Herbert, I think whatever team picks kind of their project guy, the next guy, there's just not that many spots for quarterbacks. And I don't think there's enough for a team that needs one to reach up and grab a guy that's going to need a few years. Yep. So I think whoever goes first to me or whoever goes earlier, I think you could see the next guy drop and just could really just fall down the ladder just because there's not that opening like there has been for the last pretty much every draft. There's a need for quarterback, and it feels like for the first time in a long time that if you don't get your guy, you have the 3 solid options where you could still make the playoffs with the free agents available.
Absolutely. I completely agree. And like you said, John, about how you think if Tua fell, a team would trade up. I think that's the only quarterback outside of Burrow you trade up for. I think outside of that, the teams can stay put unless this draft really reshuffles and Detroit trades out of 3 and it becomes a mess. I just see, like you said, I completely agree. Whoever doesn't get picked, and I think it's going to be Love. I think Love falls far. I think Jalen Hurts falls far. I think both of those guys probably fall a lot farther than they should. I wanted to go with Hurts, but I look at so many mocks, they don't even have him in the first to begin with anymore, which I kind of look at his pre-draft fall as shocking to me.
It's funny you mention him. That's who many people have the Steelers picking in the second round.
Well, it could easily be possible. And so, we'll follow it up, after the first round's over with who's your biggest who's the one guy in the draft that you think is going to go that maybe people aren't looking at that could surprise some people. Not maybe necessarily the biggest draft surprise, but a guy that's going to be taken in, let's say, day 2 or 3 that is going to be like the Alvin Kamara or somebody, if you will, a guy that comes out of that second or third round and, takes off.
I like I don't know a lot about him, but I like the receiver Rager. Just with some of the stuff I'm reading, he's kind of moved up boards. So that might be a guy someone jumps and reaches for him, let's say, maybe earlier than you thought. I think it's going to – if anyone fits that bill, I think because we already talked about this, there's 12 to 15 wide receivers. Yeah. Someone just gets goo gaga, and they just go and grab them.
Yeah, well, I actually created this entire category because I wanted to talk about one player, and it's because I couldn't put him on my all-draft team, but I really wanted to. And it's Zach Moss, the running back from Utah. There's a lot of health concerns and injury concerns again, which is why he's not – I think if he was healthy, he'd probably be one of the top backs in the league, honestly, or at least in this draft. But injury concerns have scared him. He's an incredible pass blocker. He had a bad 40 time, but I don't put too much stock in it because when I watch him on film, he looks a lot faster than his 40 time looks. And I look at how you play on the field as opposed to what you run out of pads. And I don't know, looking at this kid's highlights, he was one of those guys as I went through the running backs and started watching these guys play. I found myself rewatching his highlights so much. And this kid, I was wondering why he fell so bad, and it was because of a lot of injury concerns. But I really like this kid, Zach Moss, out of Utah, and I think you're going to see a lot of players drafted in the second and third day in this draft that are going to be a pretty big impact player. I know this first round's got a lot of the quote-unquote sexy picks, if you will. But like we've been talking about all draft, I mean, we went through an all draft team and almost all of our picks, we had 3 different guys. This draft is loaded. There are going to be guys that fall. And I think, Zach Moss is one of those guys that I think he just gets overlooked by guys like Cam Akers and people like that ahead of him. But I could easily see him being probably not an every down back, but I could see him at least, splitting the backfield with in an area like Buffalo with the Devin Singletary. He's going to be the power guy. He's going to need someone to take that speed off of him. He's got decent hands, but I really like Zach Moss from Utah.
Yeah, it's funny. I know, Drew, I'm older than you, but you're old enough to remember when running backs were like high picks in the NFL.
Oh, yeah.
Like, and now it's a passing quarterback, receiver, defense type of a league. You see guys like, Todd Gurley getting cut. Guys just, teams just have a running back 2-3 years and they cut them like bait overboard. And so running backs don't get drafted in the same fashion like they used to. I mean, DeAndre Swift, Jonathan Taylor, your guy Moss, these guys all could be all-pro running backs potentially, but not get picked where traditionally they would have in past years. And it's weird in a way to, growing up, like, to see running backs, if they were the real deal, they were going in the top 10. And,
you definitely weren't hearing about corners and stuff like that being drafted ahead of a stud running back when we were growing up. No way. Like you're dead on. If there was a star running back, if there was a running back that looked like he was going to be able to play, you were taking a shot on him. But that's almost like what you do with wide receivers now. It's a weird and a different league now.
It's even to hear like someone like Taylor out of Wisconsin, the Steelers might even have a crack at him at 49. That's just, to me, that's almost insane that's even a possibility.
They'll get a choice. One of them will be there. One of your big three, you know what I mean? Swift, I don't think is, but I think Dobbins or Taylor is. So like you said, they'll have a choice of good running backs at the second round. So it's not like, they're left with a guy that's supposed to be good. They have an option.
But that's my point is in past years, man, those guys would be first round.
Well, now I think to be an early guy now, you got to be a generational talent. Just it's not valued the same.
Nope, it's a committee now. It's teams value it completely different. It shows by, like you said, John, when you get someone like a Todd Gurley and people like that, they're just so easily replaceable, or at least easily disposable by a GM's eyes. That just shows you right there where the power lies and where the focus of an offense lies. And it's interesting to say the least. At least he doesn't have to wear those ugly ass new logos that they got. So he lucked out there.
Their contracts are going to take a hit too, just because all those massive contracts were just signed, and really none of them worked out. Gurley's didn't work out. Bell's looks even worse. Zeke's is really the only one that has stuck, and now CMC got his, but his is different. He does much more for an offense than I run the ball.
You're talking to the guy who.
There you go. He does everything too. He does everything for our offense.
I gotta say, I'll say this too. He's one of my favorite non-Steeler players. Like if I have a player I kind of follow and like that's not on the Steelers, it's probably Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah, it's easy to follow. Well, guys, Jordan, John, and guess we're going to wrap up our 2020 draft special. Thanks, everybody who did tune in. I know we're on at a different time than normal, but like we said, with the Jordan documentary, we wanted to put it on a different day. I know a lot of you and myself and probably John and Jordan were all watching it as well. But we will be back following the draft, and we'll be keeping you guys updated. John, we'll be back, I guess, for our draft recap here in about a week or so.
Yeah. We'll see. We'll see how many of these we hit and how many we swung and missed.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Jordan, thanks so much for coming on the show, man. Hopefully we'll see you back on. Hopefully we'll see you back on here a couple other times while you guys are stuck in at home, and everybody stay safe.
If we don't kill each other. If we don't kill each other first.
I hear you there.
If that were to happen, you would be seeing me. I don't know if he'd be here no more.
That's exactly what I expect the son to say. I love it.
That's the funniest thing I heard all night. That's all I'm going to say.
Well, thanks again, everybody, for tuning in, and we will see you guys after the draft. Peace.